All right, so we're going to be taking a deep dive into this PI3K AKT-mTOR pathway.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a mouthful, I know, but it's super important for, cell growth survival
Huh?
and even how cells use energy.
Yeah, it's really fundamental to a lot of different processes.
It is, and you've sent over just a mountain of research on this.
I have.
So you're really ready to dig into the weeds on this one.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I can tell. So,
Mm.
I guess what we're going to try to do is break it down piece by piece.
Okay.
Figure out, who the key players are,
Yeah.
how they interact,
Right.
what happens when things go wrong,
Yeah.
which is,
That's where it gets really interesting, right?
yeah. And I think you mentioned that when this pathway gets messed up, it can lead to some pretty serious issues.
Yeah, particularly uncontrolled cell growth, which is,
Okay.
a hallmark of cancer.
Cancer. Okay, so that's definitely on the table today.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's zoom in on a single cell, I guess, for a second, and just sort of like try to visualize how this pathway even gets started.
Okay, yeah. So imagine the cell is like a bustling city, constantly receiving signals from the outside world, telling it to grow, build new structures, produce more energy.
Oh, I like that.
And a lot of these signals are picked up by special receptors on the cell's surface called receptor tyrosine kinases, or RTKs for short.
RTKs. Okay, got it. So they're like antennas
Exactly.
picking up messages from outside the city walls.
Exactly. And when a signal, like a growth factor, binds to an RTK, it's like flipping a switch.
Okay.
That sets off a chain reaction inside the cell.
All right. So the signal's received.
Yep.
What happens next?
Well, one of the first responders is an enzyme called PI3K.
Oh, okay.
You can think of PI3K like a construction crew that gets activated by that RTK switch we talked about.
I like where this is going.
Yeah,
So PI3K is like the crew getting the orders to start building.
precisely. But, they need blueprints before they can start building right. That's where the lipid intermediates come in.
Oh,
PI3K actually creates these special lipid molecules that act as messengers, carrying instructions to other parts of the cell.
hold on. Lipid intermediates.
Yeah.
I thought lipids were just fats.
They are.
Are we talking about fat messengers here?
Fat messengers, that's right.
Okay.
These particular lipids play a crucial role in signaling.
Really?
Yeah, they're like specialized couriers carrying very important messages within the cell.
Okay. I'm picturing little fat molecules zipping around with blueprints tucked under their,
Yeah.
well, they don't have arms, but you get the idea.
You got it.
Who are these blueprints for? Who's reading them?
So the blueprints are for AKT, a protein kinase that's absolutely central to this whole pathway.
Okay.
AKT gets activated or phosphorylated by those lipid messengers,
Okay.
and that's when AKT becomes the real power player,
Oh, wow.
the foreman of the construction site, if you will.
So AKT's calling the shots now.
Yeah.
What exactly is it directing the cell to do?
One of AKT's main targets is mTOR,
Okay.
which stands for mammalian target of rapamycin.
Oh, wow.
But we can just call it mTOR.
Okay.
Now, mTOR is like a giant factory that controls protein synthesis.
Okay.
It's responsible for churning out all the proteins a cell needs to grow and survive.
Wow. So we've gone from receiving a signal to activating a construction crew to sending out lipid blueprints to finally turning on a massive protein factory.
Yeah.
This is
It's quite the process.
it's like a well-oiled machine,
Yeah.
or at least it's supposed to be, right?
Right. And this is where things can get a bit tricky, because if that mTOR factory keeps churning out proteins uncontrollably, you can end up with problems like uncontrolled cell growth.
Oh,
It's all about balance.
so mTOR is basically a switch for protein synthesis.
Yeah.
And when it's flipped on, it's full steam ahead for growth and survival.
Right.
But when it's stuck in the on position, that's when we see issues like tumor development.
You got it. And that's why mTOR is a major target for cancer drugs.
Oh.
If we can control mTOR, we might be able to control tumor growth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got this this intricate pathway that starts with a signal activates PI3K.
Yep.
Which makes lipid messengers, which then activate AKT.
Right.
Which finally flips the switch on mTOR,
Yeah.
leading to protein production and cell growth.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that this pathway is also important for cell survival.
Right.
How does that fit in?
Well, this pathway acts as a central hub for cell survival signals as well.
Okay.
It integrates information from various sources and coordinates the cell's response to stress damage or even threats of cell death.
So it's not just about growth.
Right.
It's also about keeping the cell alive
Yeah,
and functioning in the face of adversity.
exactly.
How does it manage that?
Well, AKT, that foreman we talked about, is a key player here as well.
Okay.
It can activate or deactivate other proteins involved in cell survival pathways.
Right.
It's like a master regulator,
Yeah.
making sure the cell has the resources and defenses it needs to survive.
So AKT is not only overseeing construction,
Huh.
but also managing the city's defenses.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about maintaining a delicate balance, making sure the cell grows when it needs to,
Right.
but also protects itself from harm.
Yeah.
And this balance is crucial for maintaining the health of the entire organism.
Fascinating stuff. So you mentioned earlier that disruptions in this pathway
Yeah,
can lead to cancer.
they can.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What kind of disruptions are we talking about?
Well, there are a number of things that can go wrong.
Okay.
Sometimes there are mutations in the genes that code for the proteins involved in the pathway, like PI3K or AKT.
Yeah.
These mutations can make the proteins hyperactive, leading to uncontrolled signaling and cell growth.
So it's like having a construction crew that's constantly working overtime,
Exactly.
building structures even when they're not needed.
Exactly. And other times, the problem isn't with the proteins themselves,
Okay.
but with the signals that activate the pathway. For example, some cancers produce excessive amounts of growth factors,
Right.
which constantly bombard the cells with signals to grow and divide.
It's like flooding the city with building permits even though there's no space left to build.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now.
Good.
So how are scientists trying to leverage this knowledge
Well,
to develop new cancer treatments?
that's where the research into pathway inhibitors comes in.
Okay.
Scientists are developing drugs that can specifically block different components of the PI3K AKT mTOR pathway, essentially targeting those rogue construction crews or shutting down those out-of-control factories.
So it's about finding ways to regain control of those runaway processes.
Exactly.
That's pretty incredible.
It is, and there are already a number of these inhibitors being used in the clinic with promising results for certain types of cancer.
That's amazing. This is definitely a lot to take in,
It is.
but I feel like we're really starting to grasp the complexity
Yeah.
and importance of this PI3K AKT mTOR pathway.
Yeah, it's a fascinating pathway for sure.
So what else can you tell us about it?
Let's take a closer look at how this pathway interacts with other signaling pathways in the cell, because it's not just a standalone operation. It's part of a much larger and more intricate network of communication.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about one pathway, but how it fits into the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
All right, this is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm hooked.
Very good.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Okay. It's like we've zoomed in on one neighborhood in the city, but now we need to pull back and see how it connects to the rest of the metropolis.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So we've got our PI3K AKT mTOR pathway humming along,
Right.
but it's not working in isolation.
No.
What other pathways is it chatting with?
Well, one of its major partners is the MAPK pathway, another signaling pathway that's all about growth and proliferation.
Hold on, another pathway.
Yeah.
Things are getting crowded in this city.
It's a busy place, the cell.
What does MAPK stand for anyway?
It stands for mitogen-activated protein kinase, but honestly, it's easier to just think of it as MAPK.
Okay.
It's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that MAPK and PI3K AKT mTOR can actually influence each other.
Okay.
Kind of like two busy highways intersecting.
Okay, so signals from one pathway can affect what's happening in the other.
Exactly.
What does that mean for the cell?
It means there's a lot of crosstalk going on. Sometimes they cooperate to promote growth, but they can also keep each other in check.
Uh-huh.
It's a delicate balancing act.
So it's like a system of checks and balances to make sure things don't get too out of control.
Exactly. And this crosstalk is one of the things that makes this whole signaling network so complex and fascinating.
Right.
There are so many moving parts all interacting with each other in intricate ways.
It's starting to feel like we're unraveling a giant conspiracy here.
A little bit, yeah.
But seriously, it's amazing how these pathways can work together to keep the cell functioning properly.
It is remarkable, but as we know, things can go wrong. And when these pathways get disrupted, it can have serious consequences for the cell and the entire organism.
Speaking of disruptions, you mentioned earlier that the PI3K AKTM2 pathway is involved in a whole bunch of diseases,
It is.
not just cancer.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of how this plays out?
Sure, let's start with diabetes. Remember how insulin signals to the cell to take up glucose for energy?
Right.
Well, the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway is a key part of that process.
Oh, okay.
It helps regulate the activity of a protein called GLUT4, which is responsible for transporting glucose into cells.
Wait, GLUT4, I thought insulin did all the work.
Yeah.
What's the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway doing there?
Insulin actually needs the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway to do its job effectively.
Yeah.
It's like insulin knocks on the door, but the pathway opens it and lets the glucose in.
Okay, that clarifies things. So what happens in diabetes? Does the door get stuck?
In type 2 diabetes, the pathway becomes less responsive to insulin's knock. The signal gets weaker and less glucose is taken up by the cells. It's like the doorman is getting lazy and ignoring the doorbell.
I love that analogy. So the cells are essentially starving, even though there's plenty of glucose in the bloodstream.
Exactly. And this can lead to all sorts of complications, from high blood sugar to damage to organs and tissues.
Right.
It's a serious condition.
So the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway is a key player in diabetes. What about other diseases?
Well, in the heart, this pathway is involved in regulating cell survival growth and even how the heart muscle contracts. When it's disrupted, it can contribute to heart failure, a condition where the heart can't pump blood effectively.
Wow, that's scary. So is this pathway also involved in brain function?
It is. In fact, researchers are finding that the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway might play a role in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's.
Okay, hold on. We've got diabetes, heart problems, and now Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
This one pathway is involved in a lot of serious health issues.
It's true, and this really underscores how crucial it is for this pathway to function properly. It's a delicate balancing act, and when things go wrong, it can have ripple effects throughout the body.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. One thing goes wrong, and it can trigger a cascade of problems.
And that's why researchers are so focused on developing new therapies that can target this pathway and restore that balance.
Exactly.
You mentioned pathway inhibitors earlier. Are those being used to treat any of these conditions?
They are. There are already PI3K inhibitors being used to treat certain cancers, and there's a lot of research going on to explore their potential for other diseases like diabetes and heart failure. It's a really exciting area of research.
It's like having a toolkit to fine-tune this intricate pathway and get things back on track.
That's a great way to put it. But remember, this is still a relatively new area of research. There's a lot we still don't know about this pathway and how it interacts with other systems in the body.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we're making some real progress in understanding how this pathway works and how we can manipulate it for therapeutic benefit.
We are. And the more we learn, the better equipped we'll be to develop new and innovative treatments for a wide range of diseases.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
Yeah.
from the basic mechanisms of the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway to its role in various diseases and the potential for targeted therapies.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I have one more question that's been bugging me. We've talked about this pathway as if it's a single entity, but I have a feeling it's a bit more complicated than that, right?
You're absolutely right. It's not a simple linear pathway. It's more like a complex network with multiple branches and feedback loops.
Okay, so it's not just one road, but a whole highway system
Exactly.
with interchanges and exits and roundabouts.
Exactly. And this complexity is what makes it so challenging to study.
Yeah.
But also so fascinating. It's like exploring a vast uncharted territory with new discoveries waiting to be made around every corner.
This is incredible. So we're not just talking about a single pathway, but about a whole interconnected network of signals and interactions.
Precisely. And to truly understand this pathway, we need to consider all of its intricate connections and how they influence each other.
This is getting really deep. So what are some of the key connections we need to be aware of? Okay, so we've established that this PI3K-AKT, the Psi-War pathway, isn't just a straight line. It's more like the tangled web of interactions. Where do we even begin to untangle this?
Well, one interesting connection is how this pathway interacts with something called cyclic AMP signaling.
Cyclic AMP signaling. That rings a bell, but can you remind me what that's all about?
Think back to those lipid messengers we talked about earlier.
Right.
Cyclic AMP or CAMMP is another type of messenger molecule,
Okay.
a bit like a different courier service operating within the cell.
Okay, so we've got lipids zipping around with blueprints.
Uh-huh.
And now CAMP is delivering messages too.
That's right.
What kind of message is CAMP carrying?
CAMP is involved in a ton of cellular processes, from metabolism to gene expression,
Wow.
even memory formation.
Right.
And it can directly influence our PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway.
Wait, really? How does a memory molecule tie into cell growth and survival?
Well, CMP can activate an enzyme called protein kinase A, or PKA.
Yeah.
And PKA can actually put the brakes on mTOR activity.
So it's like CMP is sending a message to slow down the protein factory.
Exactly.
Why would it do that?
It's all about maintaining balance, remember? Sometimes the cell needs to prioritize other processes over growth and protein production.
Right.
It's like shifting resources from construction to, say, waste management or infrastructure repair.
This is making me realize just how dynamic our cells are.
They
It's
are.
not just about growing all the time.
Right.
It's about adapting to different needs and priorities.
Exactly. And this intricate interplay between different signaling pathways is what allows the cell to respond to its environment and maintain its overall health.
So we've got this complex network of pathways, all influencing each other and ultimately shaping the fate of the cell.
Mm.
But stepping back from all these details, what does this mean for us for our health?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Understanding these pathways, how they work, and how they go wrong is key to developing new treatments for a whole range of diseases.
We've touched on cancer, diabetes, heart failure, even Alzheimer's. What's the overall strategy for targeting this pathway for therapeutic benefit?
Well, one approach is to develop drugs that can specifically block certain components of the pathway. Remember those pathway inhibitors we talked about?
Right, the ones that can shut down the rogue construction crews or put a lid on the overactive protein factory.
Exactly. And there's a lot of research going on in this area. Scientists are developing drugs that target different parts of the pathway, and some of them are already being used in the clinic.
That's incredible. So we're actually starting to translate this knowledge into real-world treatments.
We are. And it's not just about developing new drugs, it's also about understanding how lifestyle factors like diet and exercise can influence these pathways.
Wait, so what we eat and how much we move can actually affect this intricate cellular machinery?
Absolutely. There's growing evidence that things like calorie restriction and regular exercise can have a positive impact on the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway and promote cellular health.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So it's not just about finding the right drug. It's about understanding how our daily choices can influence these fundamental processes.
Exactly. It's about taking a holistic approach to health, recognizing that our lifestyle choices can have a profound impact on our cells and our overall well-being.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of cell signaling. We've gone from a basic understanding of the PI3K-AKT-mTOR pathway to exploring its intricate connections, its role in disease, and the potential for targeted therapies.
And we've just scratched the surface. There's still so much we don't know about this pathway and its role in human health. But with every new discovery, we're getting closer to unlocking its secrets and harnessing its power for therapeutic benefit.
It's been fascinating to see how this one pathway can have such a profound impact on our health and well-being. And it's inspiring to know that researchers are working tirelessly to develop new treatments that can target this pathway and improve lives.
It's truly a testament to the power of scientific inquiry and the potential of human ingenuity to overcome even the most complex challenges.
Well, thank you for taking us on this incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the intricate world that exists within our cells and the remarkable processes that keep us alive and functioning.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the journey of discovery never truly ends. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to understand about the amazing world of science.